All right, so this is going to be a sub-lesson to the must be true and most strongly supported lessons. But even though this is a sub-lesson, I think you guys will really learn a lot, and this should definitely clear up some stupid mistakes people make when dealing with certain types of LSAT stimuli. So why is this lesson important? What are we trying to do here? What are you going to leave my beautifully composed and wonderful lesson with? Well, I'm glad you asked, guys. Validity is at the heart of almost every single argument. I have said 1.5 billion times now that the LSAT is a critical reasoning test, being critical of the reasoning, right? Well, validity is kind of the litmus test for how good an argument is, okay? A valid argument is the gold standard, the Amex black card of all arguments, okay? So if you can really understand what makes an argument valid or invalid, then, you're pretty good then at becoming a critical reasoning god, right? You're well on your way to that. So let's jump right into it. We're going to start with an example here. All people drink water. Josh is a person, therefore Josh drinks water. It's a pretty basic argument here that we can probably all agree with and see, right? That it's a valid argument. Our job, our goal in this lesson is for you to understand what I mean by that statement, that it's a valid argument. Validity means that if all of your premises are true, then your conclusion must be true. It must be true. No doubts, no exceptions. You have a 100% certainty of a conclusion. If your conclusion is even 99% true, but then 1% of the time it's wrong, then you don't have a valid conclusion. You just have a very good conclusion. Remember way back in the beginning of this course when I told you guys that the reasoning is just the glue linking your premises to your conclusion? Well, a valid argument uses concrete to stick them together. Valid arguments have the strongest possible support from your premises. And another thing you could ask me, well, do valid arguments need assumptions? Nope, they don't, right? My definition of a valid argument means that as it is given to you, it is valid. A valid argument is valid as it is presented. You don't need anything else. It's like a Morton steak. It doesn't need anything on top of it to be perfect. You need 0 assumptions to make your valid argument valid. It's good as it is. If we take a look at another example, all computers have processors. My laptop is a computer, therefore my laptop has a processor. There's nothing more we need to add to this to make it true. It's perfect as it is. No assumption is necessary. There's no exceptions. Because remember, when something is given to you as a fact in your premises, it is never your job just to negate or disagree with the premise. You're supposed to be being critical of the reasoning, and the reasoning there is rock solid, as long as we're smart test takers and remember to take our premises to be true, to be facts, right? So just to recap, a valid argument is one which's conclusion is 100% certain based off of the premises given to you. Notice how in that last section of this lesson, I never said that something is a valid statement or there's a valid sentence. I specifically said this is a valid argument. That's important, right? I mean, go back and check if you don't believe me. Arguments are the only things that can be valid. You can't have a valid sentence. All right, let's see why real quick using my example from earlier. Premise 1, all computers have processors. Premise 2, my laptop is a computer. Conclusion, therefore my laptop has a processor. As an argument, when we take it all together, it's valid. But what if we want a valid sentence? Well, take one of my sentences out of the argument. All right, so here we've got a sentence. My laptop is a computer. Is this valid? Right? How can it be? That goes completely against the definition of what validity is. Just to fill in any gaps, let me give you that again. Validity is if the premises are true, then your conclusion must be true. With just this sentence here, what premises do we have to back up the statement my laptop is a computer? None. Literally none. There's no argument. What that hits home to you is the difference between a valid statement and a true statement. And that difference is there's no such thing as a valid statement. Truth is a property of a statement or a sentence. A statement is either true or it's not true. For example, if I say my laptop is a smoothie, that's not a true statement. It's just factually wrong. So the concept of truth can only be applied to a sentence or a statement, okay? And a statement is either factually correct or it's not. Validity can only be applied to an argument. Why? Because in order to deem something valid, you need to have premises. Validity is a way to describe the degree to which something is supported. If you just have a statement, then there's no support for us to describe or judge it, right? So at the heart of the matter, validity is a property of arguments. Truth is a property of statements. It would be 100% incorrect to look at an argument and say that it's either true or untrue. What you can do is look at an argument and say this is supported or it's not supported, and then you can judge that support. You can say it's supported concretely, it's supported strongly, or it's not supported strongly or not supported at all. Okay? With arguments, we're just trying to be critical of our reasoning, which is just a nice way of saying how strongly does our evidence, does our premises back up the conclusion we're trying to reach, the conclusion we're given. Isn't that the same thing that lawyers try and do? A prosecutor takes a look at evidence and decides, do I have enough evidence, enough support to support the conclusion that this person is guilty? A defense lawyer takes a look at the evidence and decides, does this person have a case? Right? There's a difference between having a strong or a weak case and then, just fabricated evidence, right? They're kind of related. They're both in the legal field, but they're very different. That's what makes validity one of the more practical skills you build when studying for the LSAT as far as your prospective career is concerned. As a lawyer, you're going to be judging the validity of arguments all the time, so we might as well get the ball rolling with that now. So by this point, you're probably telling yourself, damn, this validity stuff is pretty hardcore. How many possible arguments are there out in the world where you can conclude something with absolute certainty? Right? There are infinite, guys. There are infinite arguments out there that can be valid. You just have to be creative with them. But even though there are a lot of different valid argument forms, the LSAT specifically likes 3 of them. And in this part of the lesson, we're going to take a look at these 3 and see how we can use them to make ourselves better in our questions. First up, we have this. We have modus ponens. You might remember this from our conditional logic lesson, and you should hopefully be tying this lesson into conditional logic because both a conditional logic setup guarantees something like validity. What does it guarantee? The necessary condition, right? Validity guarantees a conclusion. Okay, conditional logic guarantees a necessary condition, validity guarantees a conclusion. That's like peanut butter and jelly. They go so well together. It's so easy to test conditional logic with validity. All right, so if we look at an example for this, all right, it says all boys like sports cars. Rob is a boy, therefore Rob likes sports cars. If we diagram this out conditionally, what do we get? Premise 1, if boy, then likes sports cars. Premise 2, he is a boy. Conclusion, he likes sports cars. That's it. All we're doing here is just affirming, just agreeing, saying we have our sufficient condition. And by doing that, we're able to guarantee our necessary condition. Next up, we have modus tollens. Again, another element talked about in our conditional logic lesson pretty in depth. All right, let's take a look at another example. All race car drivers like fast cars. Bettina does not like fast cars. Therefore, Bettina is not a race car driver. If we take a look at this form, from our conditional diagram, premise 1 says, if race car driver, then fast cars, likes fast cars. Premise 2 says doesn't like fast cars. Conclusion, therefore not a race car driver. Just to review, how do we get there? We use our contrapositive. We glue it together. The contrapositive of premise 1 allows us to use premise 2. Now, we have our last of the valid argument forms, and this one is also dealing with conditional logic, and actually it's just the joining of multiple conditional statements. Okay? All boys like sports cars. Anyone who likes sports cars has to enjoy going fast. Therefore, all boys enjoy going fast. If we look at our conditional setup here, okay? Premise 1, if you're a boy, then you like sports cars. Premise 2, if you like sports cars, then you enjoy going fast. Conclusion, therefore, boys like going fast. All we've done here is link 2 conditional statements, right? If you struggle with something like that, then go back to our conditional logic lesson and I'll make sure it makes sense to you. But here we can guarantee that our conclusion is correct because we've joined up 2 conditionals, and thus we can guarantee our necessary condition and our conclusion as long as our premises hold true. Now let's take a look at a couple practice problems for these guys and just make sure that we can leave this lesson with a mastery of the topic.